So today we're going to talk about art history. The study of the history of art is called, unsurprisingly, art history. This discipline focuses on the development and uses of art throughout the human history. Art historians seek to translate visual information within the arts into written critiques and analysis. So where do we actually begin? The truth is, nobody begins to think about the history of art without having first come across some art in the first place. What you see here is a painting from many years back, and it is actually believed that it's made from cavemen. Next is the most famous painting, and I bet you all know this masterpiece. The painting of Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. What do art historians study? In general, art historians focus on the visual arts, those which are defined by visual qualities and perception. It could be painting, sculpture, architecture, ceramics, and textiles falls in this category. Generally, art historians do not study performance arts like music and theater, or literary arts like poetry. The goals of art history. Art history is a discipline that examines trends, movements, and periods in history of art. As a field of study, it is more concerned with a large-scale artistic movements rather than the act of creating any piece of art. Art history requires you to study and describe what you see in terms of the design of elements, of line, shape, color, value, and texture. Once you write a response to one work of art, you can compare it to another work of art. An alternative is to make a comparison and contrast between artists and their artistic works with a mind's eye. So this is the timeline of the artistic movements of arts. Onto the timeline of the prominent movements of history of arts. We have Pliny the Elder and the ancient precedents. The earliest surviving writing on art that can be classified as art history are the passages in the Pliny the Elder's Natural History concerning the development of Greek sculpture and painting. Next is Vasari and artist biographies. It was Giorgio Vasari, the Tuscan painter, sculptor, and author of the lives of the most excellent painters, sculptors, and architects, who wrote the first true history of art. He emphasized the art's progression and development, which was a milestone in this field. The book is generally considered to be the first study of art history. It is immensely detailed and remains useful even today for art historians looking to understand the development of Western art. Winckelmann and art criticism. Scholars such as Johann Joachim Winckelmann criticized Vasari's cult of artistic personality, and they argued that the real emphasis in the study of art should be the views of the learned beholder, not the unique viewpoint of the charismatic artist. Winckelmann's writings thus were the beginning of the art criticism. Next is Wölfflin and stylistic analysis. Heinrich Wölfflin, who studied under Burckhardt in Basel, is the father of the modern art history. He introduced a scientific approach to the history of art, focusing on the three concepts. One is the studying of art using psychology. Next is the studying of art through comparison. And the last one is the studying of art based on ideas of nationhood. Next is Panofsky and the iconography. Iconology is a broader term that referred to all symbolism, whether derived from a specific text or not. Today, art historians sometimes use these terms interchangeably. Panofsky, in his early work, also developed the theories of Hegel, but became eventually more preoccupied with iconography, and in particular with the transmission of themes related to classical antiquity in the Middle Ages and Renaissance. We have Sigmund Freud and his psychoanalysis. Psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud wrote a book on the artist Leonardo da Vinci, in which he used Leonardo's painting to interrogate the artist's psyche and sexual orientation. In 1914, Sigmund Freud published a psychoanalytical interpretation of Michelangelo's Moses titled Der Moses des Michelangelo, as one of the first psychology-based analyses on a work of art. Freud first published this work shortly after reading Vasari's Lives.
Jungian archetypes. Jungian archetypes are defined as images and themes that derives from the collective unconscious. As proposed by Carl Jung, archetypes have universal meaning across cultures and may show up in dreams, literature, art, or religion. Jung labeled these archetypes the self, the persona, the shadow, and the anima or animus. As you can see, the following are examples of Jungian archetypes, which are actualization of things you desire, your goals, your belief, your flaws, and your motto. Marxist ideology. Ideology, according to Marx, is a veil over the economic base in order to prevent people from seeing its inherent injustice. Ideology convinces people that the current state of the production is justified, warranted, natural, or anything else which gets them to comply. Marx emphasized ideology as rooted in contradictory relations, specifically operating to distort and thus justifying the exploitation taking place in the capitalist exchange process. Marx's ideology expressed how they feel about injustice without telling it directly for everyone to understand. In short, it is like a hidden message. Feminist art history. The feminist art movement emerged in the early 60s during the second wave of feminism. Feminist artists worldwide set out to re-establish the founding pillars and receptions of contemporary art. The movement inspired change, reshaped cultural attitudes, and transformed gender stereotypes in the arts. Barthes and semiotics. Barthes and semiotic theory broke down the process of reading signs and focused on their interpretation by different cultures and society. According to Barthes, signs have both the signifier, being the physical form of the sign as we perceive it through our senses, and the signified, or meaning that is interpreted. Semiotics is an investigation into how meaning is created and how meaning is communicated. Its origins lie in the academic studies of how signs and symbols created meaning. Museum studies and collecting. Museum collections such as objects, specimens, archivals, and manuscripts collections are important museum resources in their own right, as well as being valuable for the information they provide about process, events, and interaction among people and environment. So as the word museum na take clue Annale, which is the building that holds historical artifacts, fossils, and also arts. New materialism. New materialism is a term ascribed to a range of contemporary perspectives in art, humanities, and social studies that have been common in theoretical and practical turned to matter. This is an example of a new materialism, which I can't interpret clearly, but I think it's as its name suggests, art that's made with new materials. Nationalist art history. The making of art, the academic history of art, and the history of art museums are closely intertwined with the rise of nationalism. Art created in the modern era, in fact, has often been an attempt to regenerate feelings of love of one's country. Most art historians working today identify their specialty as the art of particular culture and time period, and often such cultures are also nations. To cut the story short, most art historians represent their country's culture and history through their piece. This is an example of nationalism art. There are a lot of art about nationalism, but I choose this because it is a Filipino art that shows Filipinos going to war, maybe against the Spaniards. Divisions by period. The discipline of art history is traditionally divided into specifications or concentrations based on era or regions, which further subdivision based on media. As time and technology progressed, so did art, and art history has been divided into periods based on techniques and common trends. Here are the division of art periods, which started as prehistoric art, then Paleolithic art, Neolithic, Metal Age, Ancient art, Medieval, Baroque, Neoclassicism, Romanticism, Realist art, Realism art, Modern art, and Contemporary art, which is what we have now. Professional organizations. In the United States, the most important art history organization is the College Art Association. It organizes an annual conference and publishes the art bulletin and the art journals. Similar organizations exist in other parts of the world, as well as for the specifications such as architectural history and Renaissance art history. In the UK, for example, the Association of Art Historians is the premier organization, and it publishes the journal titled Art History. So that's it for our report about art history. Thank you for listening, and God bless.